kind of that we are in a little bit of a mini crypto winter right now. Recessions happen to be a time that every company that I've ever really built significantly has been in a recession. And so now that we're going into another one of those, I'm really excited for that. And I don't mean to say that in a kind of a flippant way. I mean, there's a lot of people that go through hard times with this, but it's a great time for the people who are really serious about this and building the real aspects of the future for them to thrive and come through this even stronger than they went into it. So.
Welcome to the Alpha Pod, hosted by me, Jessup. What is Alpha? Alpha and Web3 are things that are not known by many, or oftentimes you're hearing it first. We've undergone a little rebrand and taken the show to the next level. Not only will we continue to explore the world of Web3, we're going to expand into learning about leadership and what it takes to build a sustainable business. Today's guest is Jason Melo, who at the time of recording was CTO of VHS, the company responsible for ZED Run. And now he's full-time on his new project called TouchBrick. Everything you're about to hear is not financial advice and meant for educational purposes only. I don't endorse any of the guests on this show unless specifically expressed. Some of the guests is the first time meeting and learning about their projects in real time as we're recording. So without further ado, let's tap into the episode. So I'm glad to have you here. Jason, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Cool. Thanks, Jessup. So Jason Melo. I am CTO at VHS, Virtually Human Studio, a Web3 entertainment and gaming company focused on entertainment, right? So, and I've been in the Web3 space for a while now, also co-founder of another Web3 startup called TouchBrick. Steeped in the space, have been involved in blockchain and crypto for a while now, since about 2012. And I'm kind of call it serial entrepreneur, CTO for the entirety of my career. So kind of across a number of different projects throughout the years, e-commerce, artificial intelligence, crypto, financial services. And so that's me.
Yeah. Why don't you tell everybody, I know who VHS is, but there's a flagship product that I'm sure a lot of the listeners will have heard.
Yeah, and a lot of times I kind of intentionally don't mention the flagship right off the bat, and really like to touch on VHS because we are a studio, an entertainment studio with a number of different properties now, but our flagship is ZED Run, and that's what most folks in the space would know about. And so ZED Run is, I think right now, technically the largest sports gaming property in the blockchain space. And so ZED Run is, for folks who don't know, a virtual horse racing game. So not only the racing, but also the breeding and operating stables and all the different aspects that you would have in real world horse racing and horse breeding. We've emulated that and brought that over into the digital space and specifically onto the blockchain.
VHS, it's not obviously ZED Run is one product. So you guys have multiple products, multiple games?
Yeah, we do. We have 3 now. So we released Human Park back in May, I believe, was our first drop of that game. So Human Park.
You said that very Web3, like back in May. That was a month ago.
Oh, I know. But, month is a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
In crypto and in Web3. So it feels like that already. Yeah. So Human Park we released last month, back in May. And we have an upcoming game releasing this summer called Animora. So those are 3 very different games, very different experiences in the entertainment space. Human Park, kind of think about it as, Fortnite meets PUBG meets Decentraland, but on the Unreal gaming engine. So on Unreal 5, so high fidelity experience, first of its kind in terms of blockchain wallet integration on the Unreal Engine. We built that in partnership with Epic Games, the creators of Unreal. So that's been a really fantastic project and really excited about that. And Animora is an upcoming release. I won't go into too much detail on that, but that's more in the pixel art space. And that one is, just like ZED Run is focused on web and mobile web. Whereas Human Park is, as I mentioned, Unreal. So that's gaming PCs, Mac, and we'll see about future releases on high-end consoles.
How did you get into the Web3 space?
When I got into, at the time, it was just, blockchain crypto, right? So back in 2012, I was the co-founder of an exchange called itBit. And itBit was, at the time, the largest exchange in the US, and we were also the first ever regulated exchange. And we received our FDIC insurance, first of its kind in the crypto space, first ever digital asset platform exchange to be FDIC insured by the U.S. banking regulation. So that company then became pivoted into what's now called Paxos. The itBit brand still exists and that exchange still exists, but that was my first foray into the space back in 2012. And actually remember going to the first ever Bitcoin conference back in 2013. And I was speaking with my wife about this recently, where that was Vitalik's first ever presentation on Ethereum and what he was going to do with Ethereum and this whole concept of smart contracts. And it was kind of really interesting to see the reception that he got in that conference, where there's a few people in the room kind of getting it and nodding their heads, and the rest of the room just either confused or shaking their heads. So it's a wild time to be part of the space.
How did you stumble on the space?
I had exited my first company, sold my first company, and decided to, after I stayed in California for a few years. We sold the company to another company in Silicon Valley, did the Silicon Valley thing for a few years, and then I decided to come back to New York and really get into financial services. That was a space that I really wanted to crack into and start building trading systems in the financial services market. So started off building what are called dark pools, which allow kind of big whales in the equities markets to place, to either buy or sell very large quantities of shares without sending those signals out to the public market. And they could, aggregate all of their buy-sell side activity and execute that in the public market at the last minute. So I was building trading systems in dark pool. Also getting into private shares. So built one of the first platforms ever to trade private equity. So investing in private companies without having to have, exit events like companies going public or being sold or things like that. So as I was building those systems, a couple of hedge fund guys reached out to me and said, hey, we have this crazy idea to build a crypto exchange. We love this Bitcoin thing, and we started mining it, and we think that we can build an exchange around it. And I said, well, that sounds interesting and yes, crazy. And so I decided, hey, why not? Why not get into the space? And so it was an interesting kind of intersection, because at the time I was building a lot of things on NASDAQ and using NASDAQ protocols. So we essentially adopted those protocols and brought them into the crypto space. So if you were someone that was on, say, Wall Street, exchanging in public equities and any other kinds of like assets in that realm, you could plug into the crypto space on our exchange in a very kind of similar way, using the same protocols, the same APIs that the industry was used to at that time. So that's what made me kind of jump ship from traditional financial services and get into the crypto space and build the itBit exchange. At the time, the U.S. government and kind of just the currents around crypto was way more Wild West and way more scary.
Dark web.
Dark. Oh yeah, the dark web. And this was, the days of Silk Road and all of that was going on, even kind of prior to Silk Road when that was going on. So we actually founded the company in Singapore because we were, for a couple of different reasons. One, worried about U.S. regulation. Two, the Singaporean government was matching investment dollars, kind of dollar for any VC funds that we were raising. So it was a really advantageous place to go and create our company, especially to create a crypto exchange at the time. So we founded the company and started building it all in Singapore. And once we got more kind of signals that the U.S. was coming around to more kind of favorable conditions and more acceptance of any kind of crypto activity at all, we moved the exchange, we moved the team, the operations all to New York City. And that's when we fully launched the exchange. We were already back in New York City and up and running there.
I mean, a lot of the space is like trying things that have not been done, and then you're pushing regulation limits and stuff like that. With ZED Run, do you guys run into any regulation limitations on whether or not it's considered gambling? How?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. One, it is truly a game of skill in terms of what we're doing. So there's a lot of work, and we work with different regulators and different government jurisdictions all the time in terms of not only that it is a game of skill, but the provability around that and pushing into that space, because we always want to and are acting as one of the responsible actors in the space, right? We're not just looking to do a cash grab or just kind of grab opportunities really quickly in this space without being thoughtful, without working with jurisdictions and legislators and all of that. So the game of skill aspect versus speculative gambling is a big part of it. We are also looking at different avenues in terms of partnerships around different gaming aspects, whether that's betting or fantasy leagues and all kinds of aspects there. Our first step always is working with regulators in terms of understanding that. And in certain jurisdictions, we are able to operate quite well because of how not only kind of responsible but sophisticated our team is. But in other jurisdictions, we just simply can't touch those aspects of the game, and that's fine. And we have kind of different features enabled in some jurisdictions where they might not be for people in other jurisdictions. The other aspect that we work very closely with regulators, especially from call it an SEC perspective or other regulations like that, whether it's in Australia, the US, or other places, is our upcoming token that we're integrating into ZED. So we've worked with a company that has built and issued the token for us to use within our game economy, and so we've integrated that token into the ZED Run experience and brought that in terms of being able to provide and drive utility for our users, for ZED's, for the owners and the participants and the gamers within ZED.
Is that token out already?
So the token and its smart contracts are all live on mainnet. They all exist on the Polygon network. We have not turned the token on within ZED just yet. We're working on a few different utility use cases around that so that we can drive, whether it's around trials and lending, staking those trials from the use of the token, and other aspects of like token utility. That's more important for us versus just saying putting a token out there and allowing kind of the value to just kind of drive itself, right? And say, well, hey, there's a token, and because ZED has some value, therefore the token has value. That's not how we look at it. We really care about the utility that we're bringing to participants in the game.
Yeah, it's a weird time because like the way that a lot of these companies are being perceived, I think there's two different types of audiences, right? There's a lot of, we talked about this off camera, there's a lot of people that are buying and getting into these straight off of like financial, hope for financial gain and like speculative, literally just cannot buy. And they look at projects and the only indication in their heads is good price, good project, bad price, bad project. And that seems to be it. And then you have like people who are building predominantly usually gaming studios, or they're building not for crypto Twitter, they're building real games that will have users and stuff like that. Like how much of that inner dialogue do you guys have of like how to make a really fun game and then like incorporate the Web3 side of it?
Yeah, exactly. We talk about that all the time. And in fact, this space is always referred to as play to earn. We actually see it as play and earn.
Yeah.
And that's a really important distinction for us because, with play and earn, it means that we are focused on the experience. We're focused on delighting our gamers and the owners within the ZED ecosystem. Yeah. For us, any of the earn aspect is a byproduct of all of that. And that's wonderful. And it's important that that's there, but it's never our guiding light. It's never our North Star in terms of why we're building a feature, what we're doing. It's always about the play, and it's always about that experience around the play.
Yeah, which I think is important, right? I think a lot of these games coming in, that's what they're leading with is the earn, and now you have all these people who are coming in and they're causing this jump and swing in the prices, and then the people who are there to play are just getting wrecked. And
Exactly.
it's going to be hard to build in that type of environment, really.
It really is, and you're going to start to see, I think, we have this intersection now of what you're touching on, right? And all these people who are coming in and just looking at the earn, and then now with the current market conditions within the crypto space, the actual, the real pioneers, the people who care about the space, the people who care about bringing all that Web3 means, right? All of the, the ownership economy, the fact that we are empowering people within the space, the people who are focused, the companies who are focused on those experiences and bringing that forward, they're the ones that are going to thrive, and they'll always thrive throughout this. And we see ourselves as that. I mean, ZED is the pioneer of the ownership economy in this space, and we don't take that, we see it as a responsibility, and we don't take that lightly. So we're continuing to push more and more into that space the further that we go.
Applaud you guys for looking at that, especially in a time where you see how much we hear about depression and all these negative things that came with Web 2. And I think they're going to just be amplified in Web 3 because now there's money involved. Yeah. It's all the same things with Web. I mean, all the people that are staying up late buying and minting NFTs, and there's constant flow of information and just stimulation. And now your money is online. I think we're going to see a big impact in people's lives. So it's very important to think about those things.
Yeah, 100%. And, for us, we just see it as we're building a platform so that owners and creators can exist on top of that and create their own experiences and bring their own things forward, and not try to manipulate or gamify them so that it just ends up being a whole swath of people sitting in front of, their slot machines, just mindlessly looking for the next payout.
Do you collect NFTs?
I do.
Yeah. What was the last mint?
The last mint for me would have been one of the nudes, NOODS, one of the nudes in Human Park.
Okay.
So that was the last NFT that I minted.
Talk to me a little bit about the Human Park.
Yeah. So Human Park, as I was mentioning before, it's a metaverse experience on the Unreal Engine, and really it's about different experiences that people can have in different, whether it's gaming environments, or if you just want to kind of run around the world like GTA style, or dive into a mini game which might be Secret Agent, or dive into something else which might look a little bit more like a Fortnite raid or whatnot. And so there's all these different worlds and different experiences, and we've got a bunch of great partners that we've already onboarded that their properties essentially will also be in these worlds. So we started with the concept of creating a nude, right? So it's an avatar without a face, without any other kind of distinguishing features, but then you can customize your nude. You can say, okay, what is the body type, the height, the gender, and then you can actually put tattoos all over your nude. You can decide to keep your nude completely kind of blank canvas, or there's a number of different tattoos that we have, either different designs that you can create. Our partners are contributing, their logos, their, IP that you could also leverage as a tattoo on your nude. So you really get to make it your own and customize this avatar that represents you it's disconnected from your human persona, but it's still very individualized in terms of who you are and how you are represented in this particular metaverse experience.
The nude is an NFT.
Is an NFT, that's
and
right.
Then as you customize it, is it happening off-chain or on-chain?
So the customization happens off-chain, and then you essentially you then lock that in and mint it as you've customized it. Okay. So in any kind of further customizations that will come down the road, those will be additional NFTs that you can then acquire and apply them to your nude. And whether that's something that you adorn on yourself, or a vehicle, or anything else that you might use.
And what chain is this running on?
Polygon.
Polygon. Yeah. Interesting. In just gaming in general, right? That's the ability to customize it is going to be huge. That's you're building your identity in this metaverse. Tell me about TouchBrick.
Sure.
So TouchBrick is another company that you're working on, right?
Yeah. So co-founder of TouchBrick. TouchBrick is it's a Web3 SaaS platform that really focuses on.
What does SaaS stand for?
SaaS stands for software as a service, right? So essentially anything that you can consume through your web browser, right? It's not installed. It's kind of how most software is experienced these days. So if you think about something like, going to like Salesforce, right? Salesforce.com, if you use that as a CRM in your business, that's a SaaS application, software as a service. Versus TurboTax, exactly. Yeah. Versus like Adobe Photoshop, which, there's online versions of Photoshop, but mostly how you use Photoshop is as an installed application on your computer. So that's SaaS. So TouchBrick is a SaaS platform that's really focused on looking at how businesses can enter Web3 and doing it in a way that really recognizes that, both the business and its customers are not crypto savvy, right? They don't have MetaMask wallets, or they don't have wallets at all. They don't really maybe necessarily understand all of the different aspects of a Web3 project or a tokenization project, but they know that they want to get into the space. They want to tap into the opportunities that are there, and they want to take advantage of that. They aren't necessarily, or not even necessarily, they aren't well positioned to hire teams of developers to build smart contracts for them, nor do they really kind of know how to find a provider for that or do those things. They want to connect their data to a tokenization project. So maybe that's something where it's social login to authorize a token purchase, or it's the fact that once there's a transaction that happens on chain, how do they kind of recognize that transaction within their CRM and be able to have a connection to that user, to that customer, that participant in their token. So maybe it's an NFT. An NFT project, maybe it's real estate, maybe it's music properties and NFTs like that. There's also a ton of utility that you want to bring into a tokenization project. It's not just about issue a token and walk away and you collect your residual on the transaction in happy days. Like, that's a part of it, but you want to be able to bring utility into that. And so how do you actually connect your business, your data, to that utility? So TouchBrick really focuses on that overall space and recognizes it, and then delivers it in a no code drag and drop environment where business users are empowered to create these end-to-end token flows that's integrated with their business without having to be not only crypto savvy but also very technically savvy in specifically things like whether it's Solidity or on Solana, creating contracts there. It spans across a multi-chain back end that allows you to take advantage of what blockchain is right given the type of project that you're trying to do, right? So maybe you're going to be pushing a high volume of transactions, or you really care about having as large of an audience right now for your NFT or your token that you're releasing. Well, that might guide you to releasing it on, say, Solana versus Ethereum. But I just saw, Solana just this past week, I think it eclipsed Ethereum in terms of the amount of NFTs that are deployed on it. So we'll see if that kind of Ethereum, use case is still prevalent anymore.
Let's talk about chains.
Yeah.
You are pretty versed in most of the chains, then?
I try to be and try to stay on top of it. I mean, I'm really interested and try to keep my a beat on all the new chains that are emerging and coming out. I mean, I'm really interested in all the smart contract innovation that's coming forward, right? Ethereum was a fantastic first foray into smart contracts and what we can do there, and the EVM model is phenomenal, and the ERC specs around we're always having emerging standards in terms of what we can push there. But now we're starting to see chains come out like former people from Meta starting a new blockchain called Aptos, and they're really focused on smarter contracts and more, kind of a more in-depth runtime in terms of what you can do there, and things that look more like what we can develop on, say, platforms like, say, Node.js or Rust or any of those types of runtimes, that's now starting to come into the smart contract space. So very much trying to keep an eye on blockchains as they evolve, because I believe, and I think it is the case, is that it's not about picking a single winner, like, hey, who's going to be the winner? Who's going to be the blockchain to rule them all? This isn't Lord of the Rings. It's more about an internet of blockchains and understanding, like, how to take advantage of that entire kind of ecosystem as it sprawls out there.
Like, you see a multi-chain future then?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I personally don't think all of them are going to survive.
No, not at all.
I think 90% of them will die.
Nor should they. Yeah, right.
Are there any of them that you feel are strong contenders for, or I guess like the different use cases that you see some of them thriving in?
Yeah, well, I see Solana as one of the, call it the winners, one that will really survive through that. I think if we look at transactional throughput, their support for, really in-depth Web3 experiences, whether that's in the gaming space or elsewise, cost of transactions. I mean, there's a ton of positives around there. I also am very much a fan of, the proof of stake models versus proof of work models. So any of the chains that are moving towards that or have been built in that model are the way to go. Even Ethereum with its upcoming, what are they calling it? The merge or the
two.
Well, right. Well, it's Ethereum 2, but we're not supposed to call it Ethereum 2 anymore. There's like the consensus chain and then the transactional chain. I forget. But anyway, they're moving towards that proof of stake model versus proof of work.
Which has been coming out this August for the last 5 years.
This August for the last 5 years, exactly. So 5 years from now in August, it will finally come out. But, I think Ethereum will still have legs for a very long time just because, the size of the economy that's there.
Yeah.
I also, even though I wouldn't consider Hedera as a public chain, I think it's an interesting model in terms of what's coming through. And for certain, enterprise use cases, I think there's a place for either Hedera itself or other models that look like that. And more, blockchains should adopt things that like what the Near protocol is doing, being carbon neutral, carbon negative, really focused on sustainability. And not only from what are the optics around the blockchain, but what we really truly should be doing from a sustainability perspective.
Yeah.
And that at a high level, you can say, okay, yeah, proof of stake is much better than proof of work for that reason. Like, yeah, that's the case, but it goes a lot deeper than that. And so I'm really interested in blockchains that are bringing the smart contract innovation, but at the same time with a real focus on sustainability. So I know Avalanche is moving in that way as well. So they're another one that I would put high on my list in terms of one of the top performers in the blockchain space. Anybody
that is looking to get into the space or to build a project, what would be the top 3 things that you would want to tell them or recommend for somebody coming in to build?
I would say, first off, even though I feel that the word community is thrown around all the time in Web3 and blockchain space, and I think it's important, right? Community is important, but to me, community is, it's like the whole world, right? Like, it's not just about, hey, can I find the right Discord to get into? Can I find where the cool kids are hanging out and get into that? But in terms of learning about the space, I think that diving into certain communities is super important. The one that I would follow, and it's maybe more from like a developer perspective or understanding it there, but the Web3 Foundation and the Blockchain Consortium, their communities, their online resources, I think are a fantastic way to get kind of a perspective on what's going on in the industry overall, right? Who are the major players? Who are the major backers? What are then like the websites you can just kind of find out and dive into and learn more? In terms of if you're still from like a developer mindset, I would say just go to the blockchains that I've mentioned, go to the developer site, dig into that, read a little bit more about what's going on there and get involved that way. Another thing that I would say is around conferences. There's probably a conference every week these days in Web3, like it's madness. But
I know because I've been going to them and filming these. So.
Exactly. So going to the conferences is great. Just have conversations. I think the panels are cool. You'll get in the speakers and the panels, you get a few tidbits there. but just having conversations, meeting the people who have booths there, having kind of the hallway conversations, you'll find it a lot more. So, there's student discounts for these. There's a ton of different ways that you can get access to conferences and learn more and read up about it. But I think that's another way. And then, Twitter. Twitter is where Web3 is happening, and finding some good people to follow there. I mean, if you go check out my Twitter and probably kind of recent people that I followed, probably a good space just to kind of have as like a stepping off point to find more of like, who is like your tribe within this space, because there's going to be people who are into NFT gaming, NFT music, tokenization in general, development, investments. If you're, kind of interested in like the VC space and how to get funding and do all of that, like VC Twitter, as we all call it, but now there's more specifically like VC Web3 Twitter, and you can dive into that. So one person that I'll put out there, actually an investor in VHS, is with A16Z, and specifically Chris Dixon. I think he's got a fantastic, presence on Twitter, talks about it all the time. He was just recently, I think he spoke at, what was the conference in Eastern Florida a couple weeks back.
Here or Eastern Florida?
It was in Eastern Florida. It was in like Palm Beach, I think.
Oh, Permissionless.
Yes, exactly. So Permissionless. He spoke at that conference. It was a great talk. So he's someone that, even if you're not in the investment space, at least the companies that he's talking about and some of the topics he's touching on will then give you a lot of, kind of ideas of what's relevant and what the future looks like in the space.
What is something that excites you the most about this space, like in the future? What something coming?
I think everything is coming, right? And I'll try not to get like too conceptual, too theoretical here, but to me, I use the word token a lot, because to me, token is not just some like, hey, it's a coin, or hey, there's just like this like one thing that exists in my wallet. A token really represents the fact that you have your blockchain database layer, right? And you then kind of at the top end have, call it like the economics around the entire model. But in that middle layer there, you have the computing layer. You have what are smart contracts. And you have the fact that this is now and will be for the future, the foreseeable future, it truly is the new internet and the new computing paradigm in terms of how we think about not only building, games and experiences, but how we build companies. So that's probably the thing that I'm most excited about, is that we are right on the cusp and still so early days in every regard, that this is now the new way that we're going to look at essentially building everything going forward. People ask me like, okay, well, what's a use case for tokens, or what I can do here or whatnot? And I'll respond to them a lot. I'm like, well, how long is a string? Right? Well, it's like it's infinite, right? Or it's nothing. And it's very similar in terms of tokens, in terms of what we can do on this new, real application runtime and new computing system. So that's what I'm really most excited about. And I'm also really excited about, and to kind of keep it on the kind of conceptual tip, so excited at the fact that we're finally starting to get a little bit past the point where whenever we talk about the metaverse, it is not just about some VR experience or some like Decentraland type thing, right? The metaverse really is about where we can digitally exist, both for, yes, experiences, entertainment, gaming, hanging out with friends, attending meetings, going to all those things, but really where the new landscape of digital business is occurring. So I am super excited for all of that, and that's kind of what I'm most excited about. So there's not like one thing in particular. Like there's a bunch that's kind of on the near-term horizon that is cool and whatnot. Whether that's around, like we were talking about, like the Ethereum merge and what's going on there, that's great. I'm excited about the fact that kind of that we are in a little bit of a mini crypto winter right now, and for me that means that a lot of the chuff, a lot of that is getting weeded out of the system. And it's a great point for that to always happen. I mean, like recessions happen to be a time that every company that I've ever really built significantly has been in a recession. And so now that we're going into another one of those, I'm really excited for that. And I don't mean to say that in a kind of a flippant way. I mean, there's a lot of people that go through hard times with this, but it's a great time for the people who are really serious about this and building the real aspects of the future for them to thrive and come through this even stronger than they went into it. So
awesome. You mentioned your Twitter, so you want to in all the places people can find you.
Sure. So on Twitter, I'm just Jason Melo, JasonMelo, and pretty straightforward. I want to start tweeting more. I don't post as much as I should, but I'll be doing a little bit more of that. But if you check out who I'm following, I think that's the most kind of interesting part about that. I try to be as selective as possible, but I'm not always as successful with that. But yeah, that's how you can find me on Twitter. And LinkedIn is also a place that I live, both from, always trying to recruit some of the best talent in the industry that we can. And it's also a place where I have a little bit more kind of activity. So I'm just Jason Melo on LinkedIn as well. And pretty much everything else from a social perspective, I still stay private. So,
well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, appreciate it, Joseph. Thank you.